Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Indiana State Police Roadshow. I'm your host, Sergeant John Perrine, Indiana State Police Public Information Office of the Indianapolis District. The Roadshow is brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the State Police Alliance. Thank you to the efforts of Mr. Tom Trial, who makes you not only audio available, but visually available on our YouTube channel. And Tom likes to stay behind the camera, but we appreciate his efforts so much. Very, very special guests today, and Mike. And first, we'll start with John DeSauer, weather man from Fox 59, CBS 4, and of course Mike Pruitt from Wayne Township Fire is a regular here. Has got his own seat. Mm-hmm. So thanks for coming. When I was thinking about this severe weather preparedness, and we're coming into the season. John interacts with us a lot on Twitter and things when we have weather topics going, and so we definitely appreciate that interaction. So we're coming up on it. It's springtime. It's no secret that there's going to be storms. What are some overall things that people should know?
Well, first thing, and I always get a little concerned when people talk about storm season, because really they're 24 or 12 months out of the year is storm season. We can get tornadoes any time of the year, but this is our peak season. Going into April and June in Indiana, or I should say April, May, and June would be the time when we see the most tornadoes on, historically speaking, since 1950. So this is when it starts becoming top of mind. We're starting to get the clash between the cold air that's still trying to struggle around a little bit to hang on, and then the warmer air coming in, and that's when you start getting more thunderstorms and the environment for possible tornadoes as well.
Yeah, so I'm kind of a weather nerd, essentially. I love it. I love the weather. I love to see a big storm coming in. There was one time, and I was patrolling the road in northern Hamilton County, and tornado warnings were out. And I'm listening to the weather trackers. They have the volunteer firemen that go out, and there was a tornado on the ground. And I was close. I thought, man, I'm going. I've never seen a tornado. I'm going.
Have you not?
So I got up ahead of it, and now they're calling it out. I'm a mile from it, and all of a sudden everything goes dark, and I can't see anything. And I got the heck out of there. I hammered down, and I was gone, and I never got to see it. But it came right through there.
Did you see anybody on a bicycle?
I didn't. I didn't see any cows fly by or anything.
Nothing like that?
No.
Gosh,
no.
So I've storm chased a lot.
Yeah.
Did it as a class in college back in the 90s, and I've spent about a month or so traveling through the Central Plains chasing storms. And you laugh about the cows. We actually always noticed a thing where the cows would always get a big circle, and they'd always point their backsides to where the storms would ultimately come.
Wow.
About an hour or two before the storms actually arrived. So
cows are weather predictors.
Cows have some ideas of where the storm is coming from, yeah.
That's incredible. And I think there's probably so many tips and tricks to your trade about predicting the weather. But with technology, I imagine we rely heavily on those computer models that are coming in.
Computer models help, especially as we get closer and closer to it, and they're getting better at trying to determine where we're going to see them. We're now to the point where we can tell you exactly where this is going to happen, at what time. Everybody wants to know what time it's hitting their neighborhood. We're not there yet, but we're to the point now where we can give you a pretty good heads up a couple days in advance that, hey, we've got something coming. And then as we get closer to it, Storm Prediction Center will issue the watches ahead of time, which typically are about a 6-hour heads up. And that's when we want people to start kind of paying attention. Keep one eye to the sky, keep an eye to a reliable weather source as well. And then once the warnings take place, that's when you need to start taking action.
And the key is having a plan. Is you don't want to start trying to develop a plan when the wind's picking up or you're getting those warnings. You should know ahead of time where in your house you're going to go. If your house isn't safe, maybe when that watch comes out, you do go to a neighbor's or somewhere else.
That's the best thing is the ounce of prevention that you really need. Just a few minutes, even with your family, to sit down and talk about it. Where do we go inside the house? Where do we go if we are at school? And a lot of things people don't think about, where do you go if you're out to eat somewhere? Because the thing is, Mother Nature doesn't give you a calendar invite ahead of time to let you know these storms are coming. They can happen at any time. So you really need to kind of think at all times, where would I go? And I know a lot of people sometimes get freaked out by storms. Kids are a little panicked by storms. Mm-hmm. That's why if you take some time now just to talk about it, and even practice it at home or practice it when you're out somewhere else, it makes it easier so when it actually does happen, it just feels like it's just a regular routine thing. Okay, we go to the basement or we go to the closet. We make some space in there for the kids to get into, or a bathroom or somewhere inside. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible.
Awesome. So, Mike, have you ever been in a tornado? You've been in several hurricanes.
I've been in several hurricanes. I've been in some high winds. I've been around tornadoes, but unable to see them. Kind of like you talked about, where you had the blackout. But I've only seen one physically in my life, and that wasn't very old, and it moved through Greenwood. We watched it. It was a very narrow funnel cloud that moved through. But I do remember that to this day and how exciting that was, but it wasn't that exciting for the people that were obviously in the path of that tornado.
Yeah. So when I know that the fire personnel play key roles in severe weather, at least in my area specifically, is they have storm teams and things like that go out to specific areas and monitor. Do you guys have some involvement in that?
So, in some of the rural communities, we see a lot more of that. The weather spotters are huge, trained weather spotters that go through the weather spotter courses. I like to get on and listen to those weather spotters reporting what they're seeing many times. And
I will say, when I'm at work, I actually take one of the ham radios in with me so I can sit there and listen to it on the side.
Because they give a lot of great information and feedback on what they're actually seeing on the ground and maybe what you guys are seeing on radar. We do see the communities that spread out a little bit. And there's also that thing about, you see a lot of fire departments that will take all the fire trucks, spread them out, get them out of one building so that if the tornado does come through, not all the emergency vehicles are in one spot. So there are agencies that do practice that.
And I know that schools work on their safety plans very hard. But, one thing that I recently was involved with is in a school is we were having a safety meeting and about tornadoes. And one of the maintenance workers actually brought up the topic of the gas and the electricity and how important it was to get that shut off. And we made sure that all the teachers in that school knew how important it was to know how to do that, because, the maintenance guy might not be able to get to it. So little things to think about in your plan to your house. Do you know how to turn off the gas to your house, the electricity? Because if your house goes down, could be dangerous.
Well, that's why I tell people, if, let's say, their location they go to, if there's a tornado warning, is in their basement, I say, keep a little kit of some things. Maybe throw a wrench in there so you can turn off the gas to your house if you need to. Have a flashlight around. Maybe have those little portable batteries you can charge your phone with.
Yeah.
Because they're cheap. You can throw them in a bag and keep them, because you don't know if you're going to have power, how long it may be. Even a little transistor radio. A lot of people don't have radios anymore, but they're nice to have in case you need the information afterwards.
My wife's grandmother years ago bought us this radio, and for it to work, you crank it. And you can crank it up and crank it, and then it works. You don't need batteries. You don't need electricity. And, it was kind of one of those things, a gift that you laugh off at first, but we used it one time. I mean, it was the power went out. We didn't have any communication. Cell phones weren't working. So we listened to the radio to listen to what was going on.
That's one of the things in the disasters that I've been to is people don't understand when these storms come through, whether it was a tornado or a hurricane, when technology gets wiped out, your cell phone's not going to do you any good. Once you lose that wireless signal, or you lose wireless connection in your home that you're used to. So you really need backup plans of maybe even creating meeting places that, hey, if something happens, we're going to drive to this person's house 15, 20 miles. This is going to be our rally point for our family members in any situation, whether it's severe weather or not. But, he was mentioning the transistor radios. The one thing that always got us information in the middle of our disasters was an AM radio.
Yeah.
And the weather alert radios like I have here that, we encourage people to go out and buy to put in their homes and keep those powered up. They have AM, FM radios in them, most of them. And you're able to listen to radio broadcasts, because radio broadcast signals can go a long ways. And so you can get a lot of your information and direction on what you need to do or where you can go for help through that little AM radio.
And not just before the storm, in the aftermath of the storm.
In the aftermath. And the recovery side, we talk a lot about up to the event, but the recovery side can go on and be even more challenging than protecting yourself in the beginning.
So now's the time. If you're watching this show or listening to this show and you have one of those in a drawer somewhere, go get a fresh set of batteries and stick them in there.
Two things a lot about the radios. One is making sure you've got new batteries in there. A lot of them, the batteries actually, people don't realize, are only good for about 72 hours if you've lost power. So I always tell people to change them out when we have the time change. The other thing is, to me, and I'm slightly biased with this, but I think those are probably just as important as everybody having in their home as a smoke detector. Yeah. Because in essence, that's your weather detector. When it goes off, that means the Weather Service has issued something. Oftentimes there's no middleman having to wait for somebody else to pass information on. That's coming straight from the Weather Service and comes out right away.
Yep. And I know I've been in areas where they issue a warning and an iPhone will send an alert, and sometimes people will think, oh, my phone will go off, but you can't count on that.
If you understand the technology and understand how many gateways that has to get through to get to your phone, that's got a lot less.
Yeah. So here's an old thing that I remember as a kid, and if you see lightning, Can you count until you hear the thunder, and that tells you how far away the storm is?
That is correct. Yeah. So it's every 5 seconds is 1 mile due to the speed of sound.
Oh, okay.
So the lightning and thunder both occur at the same time. You're going to see the flash because the light travels faster than sound. And so 5 seconds, it's roughly 1 mile.
Now, I'm involved in Little League sports and high school sports and stuff like that, and they recently just changed the rules on storms. Used to, it was you could resume play 30 minutes after you saw the last lightning. Mm-hmm. Now it's 30 minutes after you heard the last thunder. And so you often hear the thunder a lot longer than you see the lightning. And so I think that's a smart thing.
It is smart. That's the first I've heard of that. And it's unfortunately in the state we've had occurrences where people have been struck by lightning. I think it was down in Greensburg years ago.
Yeah, the softball team or baseball team.
Exactly. Yeah. And lightning, I've seen lightning go out 50 miles from a thunderstorm and strike the ground. So that's why you don't want to mess with it getting too close to you, because it can reach very far away.
Yeah, and if you're out on the golf course and Mike shooting best score he's ever shot in his life, it's the 18th hole.
It's a putt course that I play on. I usually get bored on 18
He's keeping
holes.
it under 100.
yeah. But no, and seriously, it's real easy, and I'm as guilty as the next guy. It's like, what's the chances? I'm going to continue playing. It's not that close or not that big of a deal, but it just takes one mistake.
My friends, when I'm playing golf, often laugh because they'll start seeing I start getting a little nervous on the course.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at my phone, looking at radar, and I'm like, guys, this isn't going to work. We need to get off the course. And especially when I see other people on the course also, I'll start mentioning things to people saying, hey, you may want to start thinking about heading in.
You can tell that John's the fun police during a golf outing.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Can't
100
play
miles
today.
away. We got a little lightning. I think we better call it for the day.
And Mike and I'd be like that. Woo! Bet you can't hold on to that tree. No. So where is a good place to take shelter if you're outdoors and all of a sudden you find yourself in a lightning storm?
Not underneath a tree. Lightning is very interesting because once it hits, it'll actually kind of bounce out around from it. So you can actually end up getting, I've seen it where people standing next to each other, one gets hit, the other one doesn't, just by the way the lightning arcs through the ground. The best thing to do is to get into a building of some sort, even if it's a shack on the golf course somewhere, get inside of there. But the tree is not good. You want something that's as low to the ground as possible. You don't want tall objects around you. I've even seen people, if you start feeling this kind of tingly feeling, as you almost like static electricity on the hairs on your arms or something, just start laying on the ground.
Oh, okay.
Because that can oftentimes mean that you're starting to get some of the other charges that the lightning then may connect with.
Oh.
And so you're better off just trying to be the lowest point as possible.
What about things with tires? Like, is my golf cart safe if I'm sitting on my golf cart, or is that kind of
it is now. If your cart's hit because you're not really insulated very well on a golf cart, you may get a little bit of a charge.
What if I'm inside a car?
Cars you're fine with because you're with rubber tires, you're not actually connecting to the ground at that point where there's not an actual electrical ground. So it's not going to pass through you. You may feel something inside the car, but you're not going to take a direct shock.
Now, Mike has a series of recliners kind of everywhere he goes. What about his recliner in the backyard? Is that a safe
We have
place
rubber, like these big rubber pads we put underneath those to keep them.
There you go. Well, John, I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I have a hard time finding an accurate weather app on my phone. There's millions of them out there, it seems like. What's your favorite? Where do you recommend people go?
Well, so it's interesting. People always ask me for my weather app recommendations. Obviously, the Weather Authority app is a good one from the station. Yeah. Personally, what I'm using for weather apps is different than what most people are looking for. I've got 5 or 6. Each one specifies or is a specialty in one area. If somebody's really interested in radar data, the thing I use is called an app called a Radar Scope. It's about $10, but it gives you the actual data that most meteorologists are looking at.
But could a normal guy like me probably, I mean, it's science stuff that I'm not going to understand.
I'll vouch for that. You're not going to understand it.
I think most people can get by with the Radar Scope, but otherwise, the Weather Authority app's a good app. It'll also alert you to when there's lightning strikes nearby or within 10 miles. It'll start saying, hey, heads up, here it's getting closer to you. So that's nice to have.
Awesome. So we got a minute left, guys, and first I want to thank you, but closing thoughts, just some of the keys to being prepared for these storms, the potential.
Just plan ahead. I mean, the moment you hear this message from us, just take time with your family and plan ahead. There's so much information out there on planning for severe weather online that you cannot go without reading something that you probably haven't covered.
And I would say take a few minutes at dinner and talk with the family to figure out what we're going to do, and then also play games at times with the kids. If you're out driving, hey, where would we go right now? Or if we're out at dinner, hey, what would we do right now if a warning were issued? The other thing I would suggest everybody find is a reliable weather source. There's lots of voices, especially on social media, regarding severe weather, but find a reliable source.
Well, thank you very much for coming. Much more to talk about. Maybe we'll have you back, but thanks again for coming. Indiana State Police Roadshow is out.